10. Karmibhya parito hare priyataya vyaktim yairgyaninas tebhyo jnana vimukta bhakti parama prema ikanishtasthata tebhyasta pashupala pankaja drishas tabhyo api saradhika preshta tatvadidam tadiya sarasi tamnashrayet kriti. So karmibhya means better than the karmis. Parito harehe priyataya vyaktim yayur gyaninas. Gyani is better than the karmis. Tebyo jnana vimukta bhakti parama. But better than the Gyanis are Jnana Vimukta Bhakti Parama. Those who have given up Jnana and those who have taken up Bhakti, they are better than Gyanis. But better than those who have started Bhakti or accepted Bhakti are Premaika Nishtastata. But those who have achieved actually Nishta, the stage of Premaika Nishta, that full realization of the Prema. And among them, Tebhyasta Pashupala Pankaja Drishas. Means among them, the gopis, Pashupala Pankaja Drishas is actually denoting to gopis. So gopis are considered glorious. But among the gopis, Tabhyo, among the gopis, Apisaradhika, Radharani, Srimati Radharani is considered the best of all the gopis. Preshta Tadvadiyam, she is considered the Preshta. Tadvadiyam Tadiya Sarasi, her pond or her kund, Radha kund, tam na ashrayet kahakriti. Who's there, that person who's like intelligent but will not take shelter of this pond that belongs to Radharani, who's the topmost gopi and who's very dear to Krishna. This is how the meaning goes. In the Shastra, it is said that all types of fruitive workers, he who is advanced in knowledge of the high values of life, is favored by the Supreme Lord Hari. Out of many such people who are advanced in knowledge, Gyanis, one who is practically liberated by virtue of his knowledge may take to devotional service. He is superior to the others. However, one who has actually attained prema, pure love of Krishna, is superior to him. The gopis are exalted above all the advanced devotees because they are always totally dependent upon Sri Krishna, the transcendental covered boy. Among the gopis, Srimati Radharani is the most dear to Krishna. Her kunda is as profoundly dear to Krishna as this most beloved of the gopis. Who then will not reside at Radhakunda and in a spiritual body surcharged with ecstatic devotional feelings, aprakrita bhava, render loving service to the divine couple Sri Sri Radha Govinda, who perform their Ashtakaliya Leela, their eternal eightfold daily pastimes. Indeed, those who execute devotional service on the banks of Radhakund are the most fortunate people in the universe. Up till verse 7, Srila Rupa Goswami spoke about Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. In verse 8, he started speaking about Raganuga Sadhana. Once a person has come to the stage of Asakti that was seen in the verse 7, then he is actually qualified to start Raganuga Sadhana. So what does he has to do in the stage of Raganuga Sadhana? Then Rupa Goswami said, tam nama rupa charitadi sukirtananu smrityo kramena rasana manasi niyojya tishtan vraja. So one has to stay in Vraja and worship the Supreme Lord under the guidance of Vraja Anugami, under the guidance of Vrajvasis. One has to actually worship the Supreme Lord. Kalam Nayed, 24 hours he has to be engaged in the hearing, chanting, and remembering of the Supreme Lord Krishna. So, in this way, he advised this is the Upadeshasaram, this is the essence of all the instructions. That is, after coming to the stage of Ruchi and Asakti, one has to actually reside in Vraja under the guidance of the devotees who are actually Ragatmika, who are actually the following in the footsteps of Ragatmika devotees. And in this way, one has to be fully engaged in devotional service while residing at Vraja. And he says this is the essence of all instructions. So here actually the book completes in one logical sense. If you see, the book completes here. However, in the next 3 verses, Rupa Goswami is going to bring out a very personal mood and then give a personal kind of a preference of his what he would advise to devotees. So he's saying, okay, that I have told you guys, now you have to go and live at in Braja. But where in Braja? Because there are so many places. So he says in the Braja Mandal there is Mathura, which is actually superior to Vaikuntha. But superior to Mathura is actually superior is Vrindavan. But superior to Vrindavan is Govardhan. Superior to Govardhan is Radha Kund. This is where this is what he said in the last verse 10, sorry 9, that Radhakund is considered as the highest place, and who will not actually go and reside there. So now today in verse 10 and 11, again he is going to speak about why Radhakund is considered the superior, supreme most place for a sadhaka to perform his bhajan. So in that line, he is going to discuss that the glories of Radhakund and why it is considered so exalted of all the places. So, verse 10, we already saw. There was one way in the last verse 9, he spoke about the gradation of the place. And today he is going to speak about gradation of devotion or gradation of people in terms of their devotion and who's the topmost and how this is all related to Radhakund. That's what we will see this week. So, Srila Prabhupada says, the verse 9 mentioned which is the best place to perform bhajan in this universe. And this verse 10 is going to explain who are the most fortunate people in the universe. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that this verse 10 explains who are the most fortunate people and what is their shelter. Because everybody has shelter in this world. But what is the shelter of the most fortunate people in this universe? And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, there are many varieties of sadhakas that you can find in this world. But who is the best and who is the most dear to Sri Krishna? And Srila Radharaman Goswami, one of the commentators, he says that in this 10th verse, Srila Rupa Goswami is giving another reason to take shelter of Radhakund. Because in the last verse he said this is the best of the holy places. Now he is going to give another reason why one should take shelter of Sri Radhakund. So this is what we will be seeing in verse 10. Srila Prabhupada says, those who execute devotional service on the banks of Radhakund are the most fortunate people in the universe. Because Prabhupada said, this verse explains who are the most fortunate people in the universe. Who are they? Those who execute devotional service on the banks of Radhakunda are considered as the most fortunate people in the universe. And as Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, who are the most fortunate people and what is their shelter? Krishna's devotees are the most fortunate people, and especially those who take shelter of Sri Radhakund. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, as he said, there were varieties of sadhakas that we see in this world. The devotees of the Supreme Lord who perform bhajan while residing on the banks of Sri Radhakund is considered the most dear to Sri Krishna. And for Sri Radharaman Goswami, Sri Radhakund is exceedingly dear to Sri Krishna and is also the topmost place for residence for devotees. So this is another reason that it's given for one to take shelter of Sri Radhakund. So mainly the gradations of devotion is the subject matter of the verse, and it leads to a discussion on Sri Radhakund. So as we saw in this verse, if you again refer to the translation of this verse, you will see how there are various categories of people that were referred to in the verse. One of the categories is karmis, the other one gyanis, bhaktas or devotees, premanishtas, and gopis and Radharani. These are the 5 categories referred to in this verse. However, Srila Prabhupada, for the sake of putting things in perspective, also includes vikarmis as a category and explains, in order to explain who is a karmi, he also includes vikarmis. And to be very practical, in this world there are more vikarmis probably today than karmis. So that is why Srila Prabhupada is considering that as an important category to be included and explained in this gradation of devotion. So vikarmis, here I have whatever I have added as an explanation to that category in below the title is not exactly from Srila Prabhupada's book. It is from the commentary of other acharyas also. So we will, before we get into Srila Prabhupada's commentary, we are seeing what are these categories. And after we see this, we will get into Srila Prabhupada's commentary. So Vikarmis, so especially we are going to see them, what are their desires mainly. That is the gradation of devotion. Their desire denotes the gradation of their devotion. So vikarmis are those people who just desire their own sense, material sense gratification. There is nothing more. It's just selfish. It's not even extended selfishness. It is just selfish. It desires just one's own material enjoyment. And in this life, not even next life, there is no question of future life or anything. Now, today, in this life, and it's my own enjoyment. That's all is their consideration, and they don't fear about future life, sinful reactions, or anything like that. So enjoying the material world is the primary motive of vikarmis. And one of the most important quality of a vikarmi is he does not believe in Vedic knowledge or Vedic scriptures or the injunctions given in the Vedic scriptures. He does not believe in and he does not follow because of that. Karmis are those people, they also desire material enjoyment, and they are very much busy for making material advancement also. And they want to make sure they get happiness in this life and in the next life. They are somewhat better than the sinful workers or non-workers or foolish workers. So there are various kind of workers. They are better among all these people because one reason they accept the Vedic scriptures, they try to follow the Vedic scriptures for elevation in the next life. And the other important thing is they are selfless. So they work to upkeep the society. They actually benefit the society in some way. Since they are selfless, they consider themselves very pious. However, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur says they are selfless, but they are still covered by material desires. Actually, they hide their desires, the material desires, and their bad intentions and their bad um, proclivities by practicing piety. Rather, karmis cannot see their own duplicity because they consider themselves very selfless, very pious. They do charitable work, social work. So in that way, they kind of cover their duplicity. They can see their own misgivings, selfishness, desires for sense gratification in the name of considering themselves as very pious and noble. However, put things clearly, they do have material desires, especially for selfish enjoyment, but they are in general selfless than vikarmis. And they also accept Vedic regulations given in the scriptures and they follow them for future elevation. This is the definition of a karmi. Gyanis are those who desire liberation because now they have understood that working in this world, betterment of this world, or trying to enjoy this world is going to cost me bondage. So I don't want to do anything with this. I just want to get out of this place. So they desire liberation, that is called mukti. Thinking that life is miserable, they decide it's better to merge into the Brahman. So their idea of liberation is merging into the Brahman, which is free of spiritual variegatedness and all material dualities. But they cannot actually achieve complete eternal happiness that they actually advertise or aspire for, because their pretension of renunciation is actually also to some extent selfish, and their merging in the Brahman is not going to give them eternal happiness. In that way, they are better than the karmis, but still they remain in ignorance in terms of their selfish desire to achieve spiritual enjoyment, or in a sense of spiritual um, break, like break from material suffering. That's what they are looking for. So the next category who are better than the Gyanis are those, especially those who have followed Jnana and given up Jnana and come to the path of Bhakti. They are also better. Or people in general who take to devotional service are considered to be higher than Gyanis. So their main desire is to gratify Krishna's senses. That's their desire. There is a quality of the desire change from selfish to extended selfishness to spiritual selfishness. Here it is desire to gratify Krishna's senses. So it is selfless because here it is not about one's own enjoyment, it is about Krishna's enjoyment. So the foolish sense enjoyers or karmis think the devotees work just like themselves, because karmis also externally engage in pious material activities and follow Vedic injunctions, they think their worship is also like the worship of the devotees. Externally, they think, oh, the devotees also ring arati, and we also do the same thing. They also show compassion to other living entities, and I also show compassion to other living entities in terms of doing social service. And I also visit holy places because it is an injunction of the scripture, and they also visit holy places. So, in this way, they think that the devotees are not very different from them and they are actually good enough. But it's not actually like that. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains how the karmis, they determine what is good and bad examining through their own senses. But actually, a devotional service of the devotee is actually transcendental and it is approved by Krishna. It because the main motive is giving pleasure to Krishna's senses. That's what sets one apart from a karmi. So, even as practicing devotees, if we attempt in whatever we are trying to do, if we attempt to do things for the pleasure of Krishna, that actually brings us to a transcendental platform, because we may not be able to immediately give pleasure to the senses of Krishna. It is a very high platform. But even if we aspire and sincerely beg for it and pray for it and be conscious about it, then whatever we do, we can actually situate ourselves on a transcendental platform. So, people, many thousands and thousands of people can take to the path of bhakti, but it's very rare that one achieves the perfection of love of God, that one achieves prema. So that stage is very rare. So Krishna says, among those who have taken to devotional service, one who has achieved the level of love of God at the perfection of prema, he is actually better. And among those who have actually achieved prema, the perfection of love of Godhead, the gopis are considered the best. There are many actually rasas. Here, if you see, there is a jump from directly devotees to the highest level gopis. There are a lot of categories in between. They are actually the category of rasas. So, out of all the rasas, Madhurya rasa is considered highest. And in that also, if you consider Madhurya rasa, there are many with Madhurya rasa in terms of the queens of Dwarka, the queens of Mathura, and in this way, there are many. But among those who have Madhurya Rasa, the loving conjugal relationship with Krishna, the gopis are considered the highest, because in the gopis also you will see it'll go towards Radharani, because there is Swakiya and Parakiya. So among all the gopis, also the Radharani is Srimati Radharani is considered the highest. So before we go there, let's see some details about gopis. So the gopis not just desire to gratify Krishna's senses, they do not care for their own pleasures or pains. There is no consideration, any selfish consideration whatsoever. All their physical and mental activities are directed towards offering enjoyment to Lord Krishna. They renounced everything for Krishna. They renounce all social considerations, family considerations, personal considerations, all kinds of things they renounce to give pleasure to Krishna. They have pure attachment to giving Krishna pleasure. The natural love of the gopis is devoid of any trace of lust. It is pure, bright, and faultless. There is no fault of the material world in their love that they show to Krishna. The love of the gopis nourishes the sweetness of Lord Krishna. It is the love of the gopis that nourish the sweetness of Lord Krishna. And seeing the sweetness of Krishna increase, the satisfaction of the gopis actually increase. Their satisfaction is to see that Krishna is satisfied. So, in this way, the happiness of the abode of the love is in the happiness of the object of that love. So when Krishna is pleased, they are pleased. That's all. They don't have anything else. So this is not a relationship of desire for personal gratification. There is absolutely no trace of selfish enjoyment in the relationship of the gopis with Krishna. But among all such gopis, one is considered the most beloved of Krishna, and that is Srimati Radharani. All the world derives pleasure from Krishna. Krishna thinks like this about Srimati Radharani. Krishna thinks all the world derives pleasure from me. And is there anyone who can give me pleasure? Only a person who's 100 times more in terms of qualities than me. Krishna is thinking like this. Only that person I can derive some pleasure from. But where in this world that such a person that who's higher than me in terms of his qualities? But Srimati Radharani alone actually fulfill that role of giving pleasure to me. Although my beauty defeats the beauty of the millions of cupids, before Radharani's beauty, Krishna's beauty gets defeated because he gets attracted by her beauty. So the vibration of Krishna's flute attracts everyone, but the sounds of the ankle bells of Radharani attracts even that Krishna. So in this way, Radharani is considered Madana Mohan Mohini. She conquers even Krishna with her love and devotion. It's not just the beauty, it's not just the expertise. It is the love of the heart that actually conquers Krishna, and she is considered the topmost. So in this way, there is gradation of devotion. So there is vikarmis who have no devotion. There is karmis who have some kind of respect on reverence for the scriptures, which are words of God. So that's considered an expression of devotion. And then there are gyanis who actually have some kind of a spiritual understanding. They are on the platform of transcendence, but they are very, very low because their attachment is to merging into Brahman, not to give pleasure to Brahman. It's just so that they can escape from material misery. And then there are devotees who gratify the senses of Krishna. Among all such devotees, a devotee who has achieved prema as the highest. Among those many devotees who have achieved prema, one who is in the Madhurya, specifically the gopis, are considered highest. Among all the gopis, Srimati Radharani is the highest. So now the verse says, okay, Srimati Radharani is the highest, and her kunda, Sri Radha Kunda, is actually very dear to Radharani. Not just dear to Radharani, the kunda is very dear to Krishna. So we will see how Srila Prabhupada explains the there is no difference between Krishna's love towards Srimati Radharani and Sri Radha Kund. So we will see the details going forward. So this verse 10. Srila Prabhupada's purport is just analyzed in a quick way through this. We saw Vikarmis and we saw about Karmis, Gyanis, Bhaktas, Gopis, and Srimati Radharani. Srila Prabhupada writes, Vikarmis are those who act without knowledge of Vedic scriptures. They are not appreciated. The Vikarmis are not appreciated by saintly persons because these people are actually working towards their own hellish existence. Nunam pramatta kurute vikarma yadindraya pritaya taya pranoti. So because of that, they are going to be actually going to hellish existence. And they might take birth as animals, trees, or plants. They just don't know. And that's why it is not very appreciated by saintly persons, because human life is one of responsibility, the main responsibility of delivering oneself from material existence. That is why Vikarmis are not appreciated by saintly personalities. And Karmis are those who act according to Vedic knowledge. They are superior to Vikarmis and they get elevated to higher planets like moon or other heavenly planets and they enjoy there. But after their punya is over, after their pious credits are exhausted, they come back to the earthly planets. So that is said in Kshine Punye Martilokam Vishanti in the ninth chapter of Bhagavad Gita, verse 21. The next category is Gyanis. So the Gyanis actually come to the platform of knowledge, Atma Tattva, that I am not this body, I am the soul, spirit soul, and I don't have anything to do with this material world. I am spiritual. The material world is matter, and I am spirit. So knows that the fruit of activities cause bondage. So they want to give up fruit of activities. And they are considered superior to karmis because they situate themselves on a transcendental platform. But if they don't actually come to the platform of devotional service, Gyanis are considered still be in ignorance. They are considered to be still in ignorance if they won't take up to devotional service. And then the next category is devotees, one who has given up Jnana Vimukta Parama, one who has actually given up the path of Jnana and who has taken up the devotional service as the supremost path. And among them, the pure devotees, there is sadhakas who try to perform devotional service under regulative principles. And they are perfected, and there are perfected devotees who actually has achieved prema, pure love of God. Like, for example, Narada Muni, Shanaka, Sanatan, and the four Kumaras, and various other personalities. But there are actually eternally perfected beings with this prema. And among all such personalities, gopis are considered the highest because they only know one thing, that is satisfying Krishna, giving pleasure to Krishna. They don't expect anything in return from Krishna for their service to Krishna, and they cannot forget Krishna. That is why their mood is considered Vipralamba Seva. They are very expert in doing service in the mood of separation. And the Supreme Lord himself came in the form of Lord Chaitanya to experience this mood of Vipralambha. And it is considered that the service in separation is considered as better than serving directly. And we will see what is the understanding when we explore the purport of Srila Prabhupada. And these gopis are considered as the most exalted of all devotees. They are better than vikarmis, karmis, jnanis, bhaktas, and all kinds of perfected living entities who have prema for Krishna. It's the gopis who are considered the most exalted. But among all the gopis, it is Srimati Radharani who is considered the most exalted. She cannot be excelled by anybody. Krishna cannot even understand her, what to speak of others. Because if someone wants to excel another person, they need to understand what is that other person. Even Krishna cannot fully understand her, so what to speak of anybody else. And her own personal kunda, that is her lake, is Radha Kunda. It is most exalted because it belongs to Srimati Radharani. And it is explained in the Laghu Bhagavatamrita Uttarakanda how this is the most exalted place. And the serious devotee must take shelter of this Radha Kund and execute pure devotional service on the banks of Sri Radha Kund. And in this way, he will achieve the topmost destination of service to Srimati Radharani under the care of the gopis in his next life. So, this is the gist of the verse and the purport. We'll get into the details. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Sorry for some amount of repetition because there are various like perspectives of looking at things. So we saw in terms of gradations of devotees, and then we saw in the whole verse and the purport in a short way through the beginning to see Srila Prabhupada's purport in detail. So if you have Srila Prabhupada's purport in hand with a book or something that you can refer to, it'll be easy for you to refer along with me. So the first two categories is what Srila Prabhupada touches upon in the beginning of the purport. So for quite a few paragraphs, he speaks about vikarmis and karmis. Even though the verse is about Radhakund, Prabhupada takes so much pain to explain to us who's considered a vikarmi and what's the problem, and who's considered a karmi and what's the problem. So I think he spends a good amount of the purport. More than explaining the glories of Radhakund, he explains who's a vikarmi, who's a karmi, and what is the problem. Because the general attitude of a practicing devotee is actually can be a little bit attached to sense gratification. So here in these words, Srila Prabhupada actually shows the problem or the defect of sense gratification. In Vikarmis, Srila Prabhupada says, he is the one who acts without the guidance of the Vedic knowledge. So he is considered as a Vikarmi because he does not either believe in or he does not act. Even though he might say, I believe, these people are called as Veda Mukhe Mani. Means on the face they will say, I accept in Vedas. However, if you ask them to live by what is said in the Vedas, they will not be able to. So that is why either they don't believe or they don't act according to the Vedic literature. So acts without the guidance of the Vedic knowledge. Position not very appreciated by the saintly persons. Why? Because we will see that in the following explanation. Risk being degraded to lower species, example animals, trees, and plants. So Prabhupada says at the present moment, almost everyone is engaged in some kind of fruitive activity because everybody is interested in personal sense gratification. Those who are desirous of gaining material profits by working are called karmis or fruitive workers. So anyone who has material desires and working for gaining material profits, they are considered as fruitive workers. They are karmis. But there is a special category of karmis who are called as vikarmis because they are also karmis, but they act without the guidance of the Vedic knowledge. That is the difference. Karmis are also fruitive workers, but they act according to the Vedic injunctions. So also although such persons may be elevated to heavenly planets by their pious activities, and although they may enjoy life there for many thousands of years, they nonetheless have to return to the material world. So among the karmis are some vikarmis people who act without the guidance of Vedic knowledge. So those who act on the basis of Vedic knowledge, what do? They perform sacrifices to Lord Vishnu, and in this way they become elevated to higher planetary systems. So such karmis are considered to be vikarmis, even though they both could be called as karmis. The karmis who follow the Vedic regulations are better than the karmis who do not follow the Vedic regulations. So, for they are faithful to the directions of the Vedas and are certainly dear to Krishna. Because they follow the directions of the Vedas, they become dear to Krishna. That is the main thing. Because they walk into the uh, framework of Vedic scriptures. So, that is why they are considered, they are certainly dear to Krishna. That is their main qualification to become dear to Krishna. That is following the directions of the Vedas faithfully, even though it is for material enjoyment. And Gyanis are, as we saw in the previous mind map also, these people have understood the science of the soul. They understand that unless one, like I actually give up the bondage to this material world and the fruitive activities, I'll have to be rotating in this cycle of birth and death. So by which they actually understand the soul, the one as oneself as soul and not this body, and they don't want to remain on the platform of ignorance. So they actually come to the platform of knowledge and understand higher values of life. So such a person is called as Jnani. So it is said, the Jnani understands that the fruit of activities binds one to material existence. So he wants to give them up. So thus, Jnani is considered superior to Karmi. So however, Srila Prabhupada says, although Jnani may be liberated from the ignorance of the Karmis, there is an ignorance of the Karmi because he thinks I can enjoy this material world. But the Jnani might have got liberated or might have got above the ignorance of the karmi, unless he comes to the platform of devotional service, he is still considered to be in ignorance. What kind of ignorance? Because he thinks the merging into the Brahman as the highest thing. Just escaping the material world is enough. He does not understand that his eternal position is to give pleasure to Krishna. In that way, he remains in ignorance. That's why his achievement is not considered very high when compared to a devotee. So, although one may be accepted as a jnani or advanced in knowledge, his knowledge is considered impure because there is still some personal considerations, or you can call it's a kind of a sense gratification in a different way. But there is some personal selfish interest. That's why it's considered impure. And this person does not have any information of devotional service and neglects to worship the Supreme Lord. So only when a Jnani takes to devotional service, he actually becomes superior to an ordinary Jnani. And the next category is the Bhaktas. We saw enough about the devotees also. So there are two categories. One is the practitioners and the other one is the perfected devotees. So after taking to devotional service under regulative principles, one begins and then he comes to the platform of prema. And there are many devotees like Narada, Sanaka and Sanatan. They achieve perfection. The Supreme Personality of Godhead actually recognized them to be superior to the Jnanis. And among the devotees, he considers the devotees who have prema as superior. The devotees who have developed love of Godhead are certainly in a very, very exalted position. So, among all such devotees who have prema, the eternal associates who have prema are considered higher. But among all of them, it is the gopis who are considered the highest. So, of all these devotees, the gopis are recognized as superior because they do not know anything other than satisfying Krishna. And they also have this mood of Vipralamba Seva. Even when Krishna is not there, they cannot forget Krishna. And they continue to serve Krishna. They continue to associate with Krishna through their remembrance. So that is called as Vipralamba Seva. So this is a verse taken from Padyavali. It's by an author. He actually speaks the mood of Radharani. So Radharani says, separation from Krishna is better than meeting him. He tells this to a gopi. So why? Because she says, when I meet him, there is only one Krishna. But when I am separated from him, the three worlds become filled with Krishna. Wherever she sees, she only sees Krishna. So that is the sweetness of Vipralamba. However, if I try to explain, or if it's not, I'm not qualified to explain what is Vipralamba Seva. Even if I attempt to share, That itself will take the whole class. To be very, very short, Vipralamba Bhav is not an independent thing. It is eternally present in the spiritual world, but as an assistant to the Sambhoga, the meeting. The meeting becomes more sweet when there is Vipralamba. There is various types of Vipralamba like Purvaraga, Mana, Prema, Vipachiti, like that. Purvaraga means when Krishna and the gopis have never met actually in this life. So that is considered as Purvaraga. Like Rukmini hears about Krishna, Shrutva Guna Bhuvana Sundara Srinvatamte. She hears about Krishna and develops attraction. That attraction is considered Purvaraga. It is before actual meeting. But after meeting, if there is a fight, that is called as mana, that is anger. So there is a separation. And sometimes there is, due to circumstances, there is separation. That is called as pravasa. But when both Krishna and the gopis, or Krishna and Radharani is together, still Radharani is thinking, is very sad, is feeling the separation, because there is going to be an impending separation. There is going to be a separation soon. Even though currently she is in the presence of Krishna, she's worrying. She's actually absorbed. Oh my God, I'm going to miss you soon. So these are the various kinds of Vipralamba. So these feelings actually nourish this meeting. They actually increase the sweetness of the meeting. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to experience this kind. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Jaiva Dharma says the living entity can actually feel this Vipralamba in the practicing stage also, because Purva Raga is there, because we have not met currently in this life. We haven't met Krishna as such in person. So we can actually always develop that hankering mood. It is said that one's chanting is considered highest quality when one chants with a feeling of separation from Krishna. So this is a short thing about Vipralamba, why it is considered a better mood than meeting. It's not that it is better than we should never meet Krishna, because Vipralamba is a higher mood. The fruit of Vipralamba is actually meeting Krishna, but the meeting of Krishna can be made sweeter by separation. And now we will see how Srimati Radharani is the most exalted of all the gopis, highest of all gopis. So no one can excel the devotional service of Srimati Radharani. Indeed, even Krishna cannot understand the attitude of Srimati Radharani. So when Prabhu also asked the question, what does we mean by even Krishna cannot understand the attitude of Srimati Radharani? Because the attitude of Srimati Radharani is categorically different from the attitude of Krishna. Krishna is an enjoyer, but Srimati Radharani is the enjoyed. Krishna is the object of love, but Srimati Radharani is the abode of love. So they are actually categorically different. One is the energetic, the other one is energy. And Krishna, being the enjoyer, can never understand what it means to give pleasure to, and what is the happiness experienced by the object of enjoyment, that is Srimati Radharani, the abode of love, the ashraya of the prema. What she experiences, he cannot know. And that is why, therefore, he took her position and appeared as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he wanted to experience that. Radha Krishna Pranaya Vikritir Hladini Shakti Rasmat Ekatmana Vapi Bhuvi Puran Deha Betam Katautam. But Chaitanyakyam Prakatamaduna Tadvayam Chaikyamaptum Radha Bhava Dyuti Suvalitam Naumi Krishna Swarupam. So, because eternally Radha and Krishna are separate, but in order to understand what is that Radharani is experiencing, that two separate lords have come together. Chaitanyakyam Prakatamaduna Tadvayam Chaikyamaptam. They have become one and have come as Chaitanya, but that Lord Chaitanya, Radha Dyuti, he has taken up the color and bhava, the emotions of Srimati Radharani. The separation that she feels from Krishna, the eagerness that she feels to serve Krishna always, that eagerness and that separation, that's what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to experience in his appearance, in his presence, as in his particular appearance as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Just to understand her transcendental feelings, Krishna came as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So in this way, it is considered that Krishna cannot understand because Krishna is a separate category. He is the enjoyer, but Srimati Radharani is the eternally enjoyed. In this way, Srila Rupa Goswami gradually concludes that Srimati Radharani is the most exalted devotee of Krishna, and that her kunda, her lake, Sri Radha Kunda, is the most exalted place. So why is it exalted place? Srila Prabhupada will begin the verse 11 purport with this question. Why is Sri Radha Kund the most exalted place? That we will see in verse 11. Therefore, everyone interested in Krishna consciousness should ultimately take shelter of Radha Kund and execute devotional service there throughout one's life. This is the conclusion of Rupa Goswami in the 10th verse of Upadeshamrita. That ultimately, if we consider the gradation of devotion, it is Radharani who is the topmost, and her kunda is actually Krishna loves as much as he loves Radharani, he loves her kunda also, Radha Kund. So, what better place is there for a sadhaka who wants to achieve the perfection of life to perform devotional service? So, in the previous verse, we saw how among various places Radha Kund is the best. And today we saw how when we consider various grades of devotion, Srimati Radharani is the greatest, and her kunda is also equally the greatest place. And what else, where else the sadhaka who wants to advance in devotion service can take shelter apart from Sri Radha Kund? Rather, Rupa Goswami is recommending for all the sadhakas to take shelter of Radha Kund. We will see in the next verse explanations who specifically is supposed to take shelter of Radha Kund and what is the speciality of taking shelter of Radha Kund. Like that we will see in the verse 11. So now there are few explanations and then I'll open up for questions. So why is Srimati Radharani the crest jewel among the gopis? This question can come. Why among so many gopis Radharani is considered the greatest? So these are some thoughts from Srila Prabhupada's translation of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. These are verses from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Each kind of devotee feels that his sentiment is the most excellent. Everybody thinks that their service to Krishna is very excellent. However, from a third person's perspective, if we impartially actually do an analysis of rasa, what gives Krishna the most pleasure? That is the consideration here. Whenever there is a consideration of rasa, rasa is for Krishna's pleasure. It's not for the living entity's pleasure. So when we have this consideration of what is the highest rasa which gives most pleasure to Krishna, then it will impartial. If we consider it impartial, it is Madhura rasa. In that sense, Srimati Radharani is the embodiment of Shringara rasa. She is the fountainhead of that rasa, and in that way, she can be considered the crest jewel among all the gopis. See, the essence of Hladini potency is love of God. Prema is the essence of the Hladini potency, and the essence of prema is emotion, bhava, and the ultimate development of emotion is mahabhava, and Srimati Radharani is the embodiment of that mahabhava. And in that way, she is considered the crest jewel of all gopis. And it said among the gopis, Srimati Radhika is foremost because she surpasses everyone in beauty, good qualities, good fortune, above all, for her love of Krishna. She is the topmost. Just as Radha is dear to Krishna, so her bathing place Radha Kund is dear to him. She alone is his most beloved of all the gopis. So these are some of the points that why Srimati Radharani is considered the highest. And here are some, because now everybody is speaking up, we are speaking about taking shelter of Radha Kund. We'll hear something from Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur with the title, When Will That Day Come? He says, when will one attain the service of Srimati Radharani, especially on the banks of Radha Kund? He says, attainment of Sri Radha's service is not possible when one is full of anarthas. It is not possible when one is full of anarthas. So one has to cross the stage of anartha nivriti, nishta, ruchi, asakti, and one has to come to the platform of bhava and prema in order to actually attain the service of Srimati Radharani. So those who hurried to discuss the transcendental pastimes of Sri Radha, who is the topmost maidservant of Krishna, while still full of anarthas and without qualification, are sense enjoyers, illusioned enjoyers of matter and mundane sahajiyas. So if we consider this statement and then we take the statement from 10th canto Srimad Bhagavatam that Srila Shukadeva Goswami says, at the end of Ras Leela, he says, whoever listens to this actually Ras Leela pastime, their hearts will be cleaned. So if we consider these two are very contradictory. On one side, Shukadeva Goswami is saying if you hear this pastimes of Ras Leela is considered the highest pastime in Vrindavan, and if you hear that, he is saying your heart will be purified. Here, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur is saying if you hear the transcendental pastimes without qualification, you are considered a sense enjoyer. You are considered a sahajiya. So there are historical context and there are also details. If you see the verse of Shukadeva Goswami, he clearly says it should be Anu, means you should hear under the guidance of the devotees. So reading Srila Prabhupada's explanation of Rasa Leela is very, very safe because there is Tattva intermixed with Leela. So it's very good for us to get purified in our stage to read such descriptions. But what Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur is specifically saying is the transcendental pastimes which are like which could be which can agitate a person if the person is not yet purified. And first of all, one is not out of the bodily conception. So the what one imagines is based on one's own experience. So as soon as one hears about the intimate pastimes of Krishna, if somebody is on a bodily platform, immediately their sensual desires will be aroused. So that is a sign that we are not qualified to hear that. But we have to hear those pastimes in a way which can be helpful for us to purify, to understand that Krishna is the ultimate enjoyer. In a proper kind of a description given by a bona fide devotee, interspersed with philosophy and understanding what is our qualification, then it can be heard. But here, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, because of a historical context, when during his time there were a lot of people who are mainly Vaishnavas means Sahajiyas were considered Vaishnavas, and their main thing is they would always hear about the intimate pastimes of Radha and Krishna and actually think they also can execute them in their own mundane situation. They would try to imitate those pastimes, saying, when I do Ras Leela, Radha and Krishna enter us. Krishna enters me, Radharani enters my Sakhi. So that's why we are enjoying. We are actually, Radha and Krishna are enjoying through us. So all these kind of concepts Sahajiyas brought out, and they were doing sense gratification in the name of Ras Leela. So that is why he is saying, that is why Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is very strong. He's saying to achieve the service of Srimati Radharani, one has to give up like a crow's excrement, our desire for material enjoyment. Because he says one's own selfish desire is like a crow's excrement. How abominable it is. That abominable is one's selfish desire to enjoy, especially sexual pleasure. With that filled in one's heart, one cannot achieve the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. And it's only those fortunate persons who are free from anarthas and worship Shri Krishna as servants of Shri Radha can plunge into Shri Radha Kund. He says nobody else can get into Radha Kund unless and otherwise they identify themselves as maid servants of Shri Radha, wanting to serve Krishna and have no anarthas, no trace of selfish sense enjoyment. Only they can actually enter into Radha Kund. Only they can attain the good fortune of serving Shri Radha Govinda, meditating on their Ashtakaliya pastimes on the bank and serving them on the banks of Shri Radha Kund. So this is his thought. And he also, there's things about living at Radha Kund, because now we are speaking about a sadhaka, which are the best places for a sadhaka than Radha Kund. So here Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Bhaktivinoda Thakur saying, what does it mean to live at Radha Kund? So he's Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is saying how the point is that one must forsake materialistic conceptions. First, one should give up materialistic conceptions of that I am this body, I am the enjoyer, and sense gratification is the source of pleasure. All these materialistic conceptions has to be given up after attaining the aprakrita body of the gopis. So that only happens on the stage of, after the stage of bhava or on the stage of bhava. Aprakrita living entities render aprakrita service to aprakrita Sri Radha and aprakrita Vraja as the aprakrita maid servants of Sri Radha in the transcendental grove on the bank of aprakrita Radha Kund. So he is saying Radha Kund, the gopis, the Radharani, Vraja, and all their servants, this is all on a situated on a transcendental platform. Unless one is on a transcendental platform, one cannot actually access any of these things. Even if they tend to access in this world, Radha Kund or serving the Dhyana, gopis or anything, whatever we think on this material platform, it's actually we are not entering into the real thing. It's actually what we are seeing is just our own reflection of our consciousness. So that's why he's saying what is being denoted here is a very transcendental thing. It's not mundane. And if you see Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Bhakti Vinod Thakur will very much speak about transcendental platform and not actually taking the present external manifestation of the Dham and trying to enjoy it or trying to think that they have already achieved. They speak very much against it, because in those days when they were there, that is the most important issue that the Vaishnavas were facing, because there were so many Sahajiyas who were creating bad name for devotees in the name of practicing devotional service. And Bhakti Vinod Thakur pretty much says the same thing. Rather, I would say Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur has taken from Piyusha Varshini Vritti when he was writing his commentary. So he also says the same thing, that only who can achieve actually this stage of aprakrita level of existence. If you see Bhakti Siddhanta, Bhakti Vinod Thakur says, externally having first taken continuous shelter of name, the holy names, and being sheltered at Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's feet, only such a person who is expert in bhajan can attend to Sri Radhika in her Ashtakaliya seva to Krishna. Others cannot. First, one has to take shelter of the holy name. One has to be fully sheltered at Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Without going through Gaur Nitai, one cannot enter into the intimate pastimes of Sri Radha and Krishna, especially in the mood of gopis. So he says, without being sheltered at the feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the holy name of Krishna, one should be an expert in bhajan. Expert in bhajan is he knows rasa, he knows the intricacies of rasa and everything. Only that person can actually attend to Sri Radhika and render Ashtakaliya seva to Sri Krishna. So in this way, they bring out certain aspects of what it means to live in Radha Kund and what it means to actually live at Radha Kund, and what is also the position of Srimati Radharani. There are few things related to Radha Kund that is not explored in this verse, that will be explored in the following verse. So the learning objectives primarily was to explain why the gopis are considered the most exalted of all devotees, because of their desire to please Krishna without any personal selfish motivation, and why Srimati Radharani is most dear to the Lord. That also we saw. And discuss how the principle of Vipralamba Seva reflects Srila Prabhupada's mode and mission. We didn't discuss that. So in short, if I have to mention something about it, Srila Prabhupada's Vipralamba Seva in his mood and mission is, he actually was living in Vrindavan, but he came all the way from Vrindavan to New York to actually spread the mission. And while here in New York, many times he said, my body is in New York, but my heart is in Vrindavan. So that was his Vipralamba Seva to his Guru, to Sri Vrindavan Dham, to Radha and Krishna. And his mission was to see that there are millions of living entities who are experiencing separation. Srila Prabhupada was experiencing separation from Krishna, and millions of conditioned souls are also experiencing separation from Krishna. They are categorically different. But in his own mood of compassion, he could see, I'm experiencing separation from Krishna, and all these people are also experiencing separation from Krishna. I want them to come to Krishna. So that is his mission. That his Vipralamba Seva is to bring the living entities from their separation to Krishna to union with Krishna. So that was his mood and mission, to bring the living entities from their separation to Krishna to meeting Krishna through the process of devotional service, through the process of chanting the holy names. And his continuous mood, he was always living in Vrindavan, a pure devotee. Wherever he goes, he carries Vrindavan. So Anyera Hridaya Man, Moraman Vrindavan. So Srila Prabhupada's heart was always Vrindavan. Wherever he went, he carried. And that's how he brought everybody else in the presence of Vrindavan. To give Vrindavan to others, he left Vrindavan. And that is his mode of Vipralamba Seva. So with this, we complete verse 10.